sprint number 2 is now over. We've created our envelope, and we're ready to move on to sprint number 3, which is where we're going to be detailing this thing out. In the design side, we'll be working on split line iterations or shut line iterations, where we'll be putting in graphics and colors and possibly rapid prototyping different things so we can decide what the thing looks like now that we know the basic shape of it. And engineering will be adding all kinds of other details, engineering details like ribs and bosses, screw bosses, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll be doing that concurrently, and we have methods for making sure that that's possible. But before we can do that, we need to take all of the data that we've created for sprint number 2, and we need to save it into this new folder for sprint number 3. And we want to duplicate that data in its entirety. I know that sounds really wasteful, but actually this is a really critical part of working in sprints. If you're using common data across all of your sprints, then you're going to get confused, references are going to get broken, you'll try to go back in time later and decide to go back to sprint 2, but you've changed things in sprint 3 and all of a sudden everything falls apart. So the point of working in sprints is that they are self-contained. Everything that we created in sprint 2 is going to be duplicated in its entirety into sprint 3. Okay? So to do that, let's go to File, New, and make a new assembly. And I'm going to save this assembly in that same folder. I'm going to call it 00 top level master. Okay? So this is the very top level, because inside of this, I'm going to insert components, browse, and I'm going to browse and grab my design top level, and then click OK to drop that right at the origin. I'm also going to insert component, existing part assembly, same method, really, just a different button, and grab my engineering one. Open that up, and once again, I'm not going to click anywhere in the viewport. I'm just going to click right here to drop it in. So now we have both of those assemblies. Now, nobody's really going to use this master assembly. It's just a means of being able to save everything to a new folder. Let me show you what I mean. If I go up to, now, first of all, let's save all. So we've got this thing saved, and then we'll go to File and Pack and Go. What Pack and Go does is it allows us to save an entire assembly, all of the parts referenced in the assembly, to a new folder. And here's another reason why this is a great method. Not only does saving things in sprints allow you to, well, it keeps problems from happening later on, but also you can clean out your stuff. So right here in the Sprint 2 envelope folder, when Josh was working, he might have downloaded 3 different kinds of batteries and tried them all. And he might have put in different kinds of screws and tried them all. And he might have had a bunch of different files in here that didn't end up in the final assembly. Same thing with design. I might have had 6 different iterations of that envelope design before I ended up with the final one. And those would all be in here in this folder. And that gets really cluttered. So when we do our Pack and Go, it's going to get rid of all that clutter and only save the things that are actually in our assemblies, which is really, really nice. Now, Pack and Go has some great features you should know about. First of all, if you wanted to rename a file, you can always double-click it, and then the new file that you save will have that new name. Also, you can select and replace. So, for example, if we had saved date codes into these, which I often do, so like year, year, month, month, day, day, I'll save that at the end of a file name, just so that I know what it is. You can do a select and replace, and it'll find in all of those part names, it'll replace that date with a different date if you want. So that's really nice. Also, you can add prefixes and suffixes. Now, I tend to use suffixes. I find them much cleaner to work with. And in this case, let's add an underscore S3 because we're about to move to sprint number 3. Now, there's a really important reason why we are going to change the suffix. Every time we do a Pack and Go to a new sprint, it is critical that we make some kind of change to the names of the files. That can be anything. It can be a date code. It can be a suffix with an abbreviated serial number. Anything that you want, as long as the file names are different in the new sprint than the old sprint. I know that sounds a little weird, but we can talk about that later. So now let's say Save to Folder, Browse. We're going to find the new folder we want to save to. In this case, let's save to our Sprint 3 folder. Hit OK. And you'll notice that it has turned these green because it's appending that S3 to the end of the file name. We'll hit Save. We go back to our folder. And here we are in our Sprint 3 folder. And we now have all of the files that we need appended with that S3 at the end. Now, why is that important? Let's open this up. And I'm going to go to my windows and let's tile those vertically. You see, we have both of these assemblies open at the same time, and the reason that we are able to do that, to have both of these open at once, is because the file names are different. If the file name for top-level design had not changed when we did that pack and go, then when we opened the new assembly file, it would reference the old file. I know that's a little weird. It's hard to explain. It's all about the way that SOLIDWORKS loads things into RAM. But the important thing is, just keep that in mind. Whenever you do a pack and go, change something about the name. Okay, so let's actually move on to this next phase.